We have almost a dozen new semblances added to the RWBY universe thanks to RWBY Before the Dawn, the new book that just released a couple days ago following Team Coffee and Team Sun's adventures in Vacuo. And some of these semblances really raise the bar in terms of power level as to what semblances we might expect in the future of RWBY. Another couple of them just expand what semblances might be capable of in general, as their abilities kind of fell outside of the bounds of what I thought could be possible for semblances in general. And then of course we got the reveal of a couple semblances of characters we've already seen in the RWBY series itself. A couple members of Team Sun and one member of Team Indigo, actually, which was a nice surprise to have added in. So obviously, spoiler warning for Before the Dawn, if you haven't read the book already, I will be going over all of the new semblances that have been revealed, and a couple of them are very crucial to the plot of the book in general, so fair warning on that. But we'll start off with the semblance that everyone pretty much expected to come from this book, Neptune Vasilius. His semblance is water attraction. In short, he's kind of a waterbender. He comes from the Vasilius family that was raised in Argus, and it seems all of his family have water-based semblances. Though not the exact same semblance, it's not hereditary like glyphs, it's just something different. Now, when it comes to Neptune, he obviously has a fear of water, and that seemed to begin in early childhood. We don't actually know how it began, as the earliest we saw him in Before the Dawn was at 4 years old, and he already was afraid of it, and already had his semblance too, which definitely didn't help in his phobia of the water. Whenever his parents would try to give him a bath, they'd drop him in the bathtub, and as soon as he touched the water would be repelled away from him. Neptune has the ability to repel and attract water and make it stick to different objects. And being from a family that's in Argus, near the water, and everyone seems to have a good affinity for water, it was kind of frustrating having a child that didn't want anything to do with water at all. So Neptune's older brother Jupiter had a different approach to this, the sink or swim approach. Jupiter had already awakened his semblance and was very comfortable around water, so he just dragged Neptune out to the pier and threw him off the docks into the ocean. And of course, that worked wonders for Neptune as he ran screaming out of the ocean, and the water followed him. It formed a sphere around himself and was suffocating him. He couldn't breathe, he couldn't hear, and he couldn't see because the water was everywhere. And so in a moment of panic, Neptune repelled the water out from himself and stuck to the closest thing to him, which was his brother Jupiter. But Jupiter, although surprised for a brief moment, has full control over his semblance, which is water vaporization. He has the ability to vaporize any water that he comes in contact to, seemingly instantly. So he was able to get out of that no problem, but Neptune was still traumatized by this and did not want anything to do with water, even more so than before. Luckily, once he went to the Huntsman Academies, the combat schools, the professors were able to kind of get him accustomed to his semblance to some extent, but he still doesn't like it. The reason he has those goggles is because the only reason he's able to go outside, or went outside after that trauma that he suffered with his brother, was because his parents bought him goggles so the water wouldn't get in his eyes. In Before the Dawn, Neptune says that he's not afraid of the water, but he just wears the goggles because he doesn't like the water in his eyes or ears getting everywhere, etc., but he still shies away from it even if a little bit of water is splashed towards him. So it's definitely a phobia, and Neptune, well, you know, he's got a really strong semblance, as well as seemingly the rest of his family, as long as water is nearby, but still, I'm glad to get a little bit of expansion to his character. Now, unfortunately, we did not get Sage Ayana's semblance, but we did get the semblance of Scarlet David, and we actually saw this semblance in the Vital Festival tournament. Scarlet's semblance is Glide. When he was flung across the arena in the Vital Festival tournament, he used his semblance to glide safely across the arena and land softly on the pirate ship that was there without being thrown out of bounds. That was his semblance. He's allowed to glide smoothly and land softly. This is also what he used in Before the Dawn when he jumped out of the airship during the reinitiation ceremony. It's easy to see that he was able to use that to fall from a great height, thousands of feet above the ground, and then just land safely in the sand. And then we also got one other semblance from the Vital Festival tournament in the form of Octavia Ember. And Octavia's semblance is another one we saw on screen. Her semblance is sand skating. She can move swiftly and skate across the sand. Very strong semblance to have in Vacuo, considering pretty much the entire place is covered in sand, but also having the home field advantage in the Vital Festival tournament when the sand biome or the desert biome was called upon, she had a very very strong advantage, moving swiftly across there, and unfortunately she gave up that advantage to move to the ocean biome, but still, I think if she didn't get overconfident, she would have done a lot better in the Vital Festival tournament. I'm really glad to get an expansion on some of the other characters, like Octavia from Team Indigo. I really wish we would have gotten Arsalan Altaine's semblance, but unfortunately, we did not get much of them in Before the Dawn. Still a little bit of Arsalan and, you know, Nolan Porphyrio, Octavia Ember, a little bit of Nebula Violet, but the other members not so much. Now, we do get to the two most crucial semblances to the plot of Before the Dawn. Jax and Gill Asturias, and they have two of the most broken semblances that we have seen in the RWBY universe in general. Jill's semblance is Aura Siphon. She can siphon the aura away from anyone she comes in contact with. She can't drain it completely and leave them like a husk of a human being, and she doesn't retain the aura permanently. It's not stolen from the person permanently, but she can siphon the aura away from them, drain them down to pretty much nothing, and they have to use their own regeneration to regenerate their aura, and she just keeps this aura and retains it for a decently long period of time. And in the book, she had dozens of people that she was keeping pretty much prisoner that she was siphoning the aura from, and when she does this, her own aura starts glowing a rainbow of colors and becomes visible to the naked eye, which, you know, normally aura, even if the person has their aura cloak up, it only shimmers once in a while or when it's broken, etc. But not in Jill's case. When she has that up, she's essentially glowing like a Super Saiyan. Oh, and then on top of that, the aura that she takes, she can gift to others, supercharging them and making them much stronger than they normally are, giving them more aura to put into their aura cloak and into their semblances, etc., making them pretty much invincible. And this working in conjunction with her brother Jax's semblance of mind control, which is insanely broken, means that they can create pretty much an invincible army. Because Jax, with his semblance of mind control, as long as he lays a hand on an opponent and can make a telepathic suggestion, he can alter their memories to make them completely loyal to him. He did that to numerous characters in Before the Dawn, and had an entire army under his control, including one of the professors of Shade Academy, Xanthe Rumpole. And she is an experienced huntsman, essentially the Glinda Goodwitch of Shade Academy, as she is the right hand to Headmaster Theodore, and he was able to keep her under control after one suggestion, seemingly, for weeks. It seemed like it was only one suggestion, and she was under his complete control for all of that time, as well as the rest of his army. So that is an insane semblance. The only reason he was able to do this, I believe, is because he was constantly supplied with aura from his sister Jill, but still, that is completely broken. Another aspect to that is when Jax gives or makes someone under his control, their aura becomes identical to his. It takes on the same properties, the same color, etc. That is why in Before the Dawn, Fox, when he was sensing all of these people with the exact same aura, identical aura, those were all the ones that were controlled by Jax. And then Jillian was just pumping them up to the nines, and these two together are incredibly broken, and if anyone, say, I don't know, someone from an evil organization were to get these two under their control, then maybe this could lead down a very dark path, and I have a couple theories branching off of that already. But those are their two semblances, the most broken ones that we've seen thus far, I would argue. But now moving on to the ones that actually expand what I think semblances are going to be capable of in the future of RWBY. The first of which is actually from Xanthe Rumpole herself, the right hand to Headmaster Theodore. She is based off of the character Rumpelstiltskin that has a bit of an obsession with gold, and Rumpole definitely personifies that in both her weapon, her aesthetic, and her semblance of golden touch. She is able to turn any inorganic object that she comes in contact with permanently into gold. She did this to Neptune's jacket and his gloves, and has done this to Carmen Esclados' sai as well, but she just can lay a hand on something and turn it into gold. So essentially alchemy. Can turn lead into gold, can turn anything into gold, and this is This is something I previously didn't think was possible for a semblance, as it would have a permanent, unchanging effect on molecules and things around them. When you actually think about what this semblance is doing, it is changing the atomic structure of everything. Not just, the molecular structure, but the actual atoms itself, because it's changing the physical element in the periodic table that objects actually are. This is definitely reality breaking, but then again, most semblances are, but this is also extremely broken when considered what other things this could be capable of. Now, it's not the most powerful semblance, but definitely one where they could create a lot of wealth for themselves if they so desire. But still an interesting semblance, and I'm glad that they're opening up more avenues for what semblances are capable of. Not only that, we also got our first intangibility semblance in the form of Rosa Schwein. This was someone that Sun fought at the beginning that he only referred to as Pink. We later learn her name is Rosa, and she has a phasing semblance. She can become completely intangible whenever an attack comes towards her, or at brief moments, though it's not permanent. It only lasts for a couple seconds, and then she can take hits after that, but still, we have our first phasing semblance. We also have our first semblance where a person's aura changes their physical state to a gas. We've seen other semblances where, like vines or elms, their aura takes on more physical properties, and they can manifest physical vines or roots in the world. But in this case, the character, he's only referred to as Green, and we don't actually get his full name. He is able to transform his aura into a potent green gas that makes people gag and cough, and allows for him to make quick escapes. Also would allow for him to make quick attacks, etc. But he and his allies have to wear gas masks, so they don't become susceptible to that as well, so it seems he could also be susceptible to his own semblance. A bit of a double-edged sword, but still nice to know that people's aura can take on other physical properties. As I said, we've seen solid aura before, aura cloak in general, but semblances that involve making aura more solid and tangible in the actual world, and then we've seen gaseous semblances in the form of Green. So now there's just liquid semblances and other forms of matter that we could see, and this involves or opens up the door for a lot of other semblances that we could see in the future. Next, we have a semblance that can alter a person's perception of time. This semblance is held by one Argento Pocoron, I think that's how you say his name, but his semblance is called lag. He can make people perceive things just a little bit slower than they normally would. So Argento can then dodge attacks that an opponent is making and also land hits that he otherwise wouldn't be able to. This is an extremely useful semblance, and when fighting one-on-one, we don't know if he can alter the perception of numerous people around him, as he only used this when he was fighting against Sun 1v1, but still, altering perception of time is definitely something that I thought was capable, and something that I had actually suggested to others when creating their own characters, as for what semblances could be capable of instead of, actually manipulating time itself, because that would be a little bit too outside of the realm of aura. But another semblance that we got is actually one that's very similar to a character that I created. The character I created is Zelina Ray, based on Medusa, and her semblance is when she makes eye contact with someone else, she can manifest hallucinations in that person's mind. This person from Before the Dawn, called Umber Gorgonia, has a similar semblance that activates only when she makes eye contact with them, is also based on Medusa, except this time she, when making eye contact with someone, essentially petrifies them. They go into a rigor mortis state and aren't able to move, thus allowing Umber to land numerous hits against them and make strategic moves based on a person not being able to move. Now, again, both of these semblances from my character and Umber's all rely on eye contact, and I'm really glad to see that a semblance like this was introduced. Even though the origins of it are the exact same as my character, it confirms that there are semblances that rely on direct eye contact with the user. And also, with Umber, she wears really thick glasses because she doesn't exactly have control over her semblance, again alluding to the Medusa inspiration, so that anyone who makes direct eye contact with her would then be petrified. Whereas Zelina's semblance is a bit different, it can even act through reflections, etc., but still, I'm glad to see that this semblance was introduced. Now, the very last semblance that was introduced in Before the Dawn is one that I think a lot of people are going to overlook, as it was only briefly mentioned. There was a character that was introduced, or a character that came forward to Team Sun and Team Coffee saying that her sister was missing. This girl was named Lily, and she did have a semblance to make things sticky. Allow things to stick together. Small things like pages of books or cards or things like that. They used to build, houses of cards together, and I think this this is a semblance that a lot of people are underestimating, including Coco, as she said, well, that's not a semblance that's really going to rock anyone's world, etc. But, you know, people need to watch Hunter x Hunter, because Hisoka's bungee gum. This is essentially what this semblance is. Maybe not with the property of rubber, but allowing things to stick together depending on what she'd be able to do. If she's able to project her aura outwards and have, you know, things stick to her aura, stick other things together, etc., she could essentially mimic Hisoka's bungee gum and become a terrifying force on the battlefield or in any situation that she so desires. Even just sticking an opponent to the ground or making their weapons stuck to the ground or something like that. It's a very versatile semblance, one that I actually thought about giving to my OCs as well. And when this popped up in the book, I was kind of, you know, surprised that a semblance that I thought of popped up, and then of course Umber Gorgonia, etc. But all of these semblances introduced allow a lot more creativity and what we might expect in the future for semblances and for people to create their own original semblances for their own characters later on. I'm really happy to see all of these new semblances introduced. I wish we could have gotten maybe a few more from Team Auburn or Team Indigo, and in particular Sage Ayana, but I'm glad we got what we got. The book is excellent. If you guys would like to purchase it, I highly encourage you to do so. I was able to get mine from Amazon and was able to get it on the day of release, so that's definitely an avenue where you guys can order it. Wasn't too bad when it came to cost, so, you know, if you guys are interested, make sure you pick that up, and if you haven't read After the Fall, do that first, as things will make a lot more sense in Before the Dawn. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments below what you all think of these new semblances. Are some of them outside of the realm of what you expect? And what do you think of Jax and Gill? How their semblances are really raising the power level for some semblances in the RWBY series. Not all semblances are created equal, and that is definitely obvious in this novel. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to subscribe, join the Guild of the Eternal Flame, tweet me at PhoenixKnight7, join our Discord server, link in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.